Welcome to the Value of Wisdom podcast. Today, we had a beautiful conversation with Yasmeen Selma, and we talked about mental health. We talked about how to live a holistic life. We talked about how different things are in Belgium and Kashmir. There's a lot more to unfold. Watch this whole conversation, share it with people who can benefit from it. Today, we have with us Yasmeen Selma. She is a psychotherapist and an educationist all the way from Belgium. She is in Kashmir for the last 10 years and she has been revolutionizing the education sector of Kashmir with her remarkably unique and sometimes unorthodox ways of looking at the world. We are so pleased to welcome Yasmeen Selma.
Thank you. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. I'm very happy to be here with you, Farhat. It's an honor for me to have these wonderful conversations with you. We always have them offline, and for today we can share them with an audience. So thank you for having me.
I am so glad to invite you over. Yasmeen, when I was writing the guest list for Value of Wisdom, your name popped up, was the first name that popped up in my head. And I
Means
can
a
show you
lot.
the Excel sheet, it's there.
Means a lot.
Because the conversations we have had before, they have been centered on social issues, on mental health, on education, and all these different aspects of life that basically are very important and they can change the fate of this society and not just this society, the world. So, Yasmin, start from the beginning. Give us a snapshot of what your life has been in 1 to 2 minutes.
I think my life has been extremely rich because I'm born and brought up in Belgium, which is the heart of Europe.
Yeah.
A very cosmopolitan capital, Brussels. But at the same time, my father's Arab, and my mother's
Wow.
British.
Oh, wow.
And then I ended up coming to Kashmir and settling here and being married to a Kashmiri, having Kashmiri children also. So I think I'm made of multiple identities, and my life has been, up until today, quite rich.
Mashallah.
And I think that wherever you're from and wherever you are, you can always learn something if you approach life with an open mind and knowing that nothing is an absolute truth.
Wow.
So, and there's just different ways of seeing life for different people. So, this is, I think, where I am today, looking at life. I'm continuing to look at life with open eyes and how I can help more people open their eyes.
This is beautiful of a snapshot. I want to understand, Yasmeen. Let's start with your experience teaching kids. You have been someone who introduced the Cambridge curriculum to Kashmir.
Yes.
You have been someone who is part of the transforming the mental health sector of Kashmir through your venture called Roots. How has your experience been in these two different domains, and what are the different problems you saw, the challenges you saw in the local context, and how is it shaping you or your perspective of the world?
I think it's important for me to come back at the beginning of my journey that started in Belgium. So I became a therapist, and I had a long experience of working with children and families in a mental health center in Belgium. And the center in which I was working was specified in ethnopsychiatry.
Okay.
So it was reading mental pathologies or mental disorders, but from a cultural point of view.
Okay.
And that's how I understood that different cultures understand pathology differently.
Wow.
And mental disorder differently. So, so that was a very rich experience of life because I was dealing with people around the world. And even if the symptoms were similar, that symptom in their context would tell a different story.
Wow. The meaning they associate with different
Totally.
melodies. Wow.
So that was really that was the beginning of my career. So I started as a therapist, a child therapist. And then I came to the Valley, and I had a background in psychopedagogy, and I came to start this school with a Cambridge curriculum. So the first real international curriculum in Jammu and Kashmir. And I think when I looked at children, I never looked at them as an empty vessel that I needed to fill, but rather as a gift to the world.
Beautiful.
And what could how could I help them, develop their gift more and more? So seeing the child with his potential and how to put this potential at the service of the world and at himself, or at the service of himself also. So after that, I did different researches, like how to, I realized actually in Kashmir how grades, marks were important. Our competition was important, and I was not coming from a background like that. And I was just like, you can't compete with anybody anyways, because nobody is you and nobody's like you. So the competition happens with your own self. So I did a research where I tried to understand how to develop self-confidence and self-esteem through academic assessments.
Okay.
Because most of the time, that's what breaks someone's
it's very depressing.
Confidence and self-esteem. So, and I think with all these tools, these are things I brought to the Valley, and I experience every single little bit. But even if I'm an educational consultant, I always keep this lens of, background in psychology and how I look at the person holistically. So not about only what can they do, but who they are.
Beautiful.
And then where they're going also.
This is amazing, Yasmeen. And you're getting to do this. But then the local scenario, as you said, it is about competition. It's about that rat race. I should get more marks than the other person. I should get better grades. And somehow the society also seems to benefit people who have better grades. In terms of, when we see who gets a better job, it usually happens to be someone who has had those, grades and who has had those mark sheets. So, and you coming from a very different perspective, and I wanted to understand it from the perspective of being an outsider, coming in and trying to understand it, and then realizing, okay, this is a lot different than what I had expected it to be.
I think for me, there is something that we need to understand. It's not true anymore that if you get the better grades, you're going to get the better job. I think the world is in constant evolution and change. And in the West, we're talking about the next generation would have 12 jobs within their lives.
Wow.
So it's about developing skills today, how quick you can adapt to the change. And I think the disaster that is happening here is that we are not equipping students for that. We are still teaching them the way their parents were taught and their grandparents were taught. And that is a disaster, and nobody is ready to let go. Something as simple, and I think everybody can understand that, something as simple as cursive writing. Okay? People still make it so important. And some other parts of the world, cursive writing doesn't exist anymore. And, because we shift into the digital world and but it's like, no, it needs to be done because it's been done for the past 30 years. And I think yesterday we were also having a conversation about morning assemblies.
Yeah.
You talk to anyone and everybody hates morning assemblies.
Yeah, but it is an essential and integral part of our school systems, right? We can't think of our lives without morning assemblies.
Okay. So if you can't think of your life without a morning assembly, then can we think a different morning assembly?
Okay.
Can we think of a morning assembly where we do morning affirmations, where we do visualizations, where we do mindfulness, where we do like physical activity, and not like in a in an army camp, but just like,
right.
where we reconnect
Right.
to our own bodies, and when there is no competition with each other, or there is no teacher saying your arm has to be like this, not like this, but just can we feel again? Okay, because I think when we just are pushed to memorize and not think, to be like robots, and just to be what we're told to be, the creativity and the spontaneity and life can't flow anymore, actually.
That's so true. I'm reminded of that TED talk by Ken Robinson, Sir Ken Robinson, and he talks about this idea that we are preparing our kids without having any idea of how and what future is going to be. And we are employing the tools of the past to prepare our kids for for the future that we do not even know what it has in it for us. And the way AI and the way all these different very weird things, the way social media has changed the world, it's remarkable. And do you sometimes feel a disconnect? I mean, as an educator, as somebody who's been part of the educational system, did you feel that disconnect? Because I feel it every time. I feel okay.
Your generation.
Okay. I have to navigate the conversation in English. So I feel our generation, the generation of the kids, the generation that's in school these days, they're living dual lives.
Totally.
And their teachers have no idea what these children are getting exposed to.
Totally.
We often talk about how, I was recently having this interaction with some school kids, and they came up with this idea of how much they love Andrew Tate. He's emerged as the social figure that these young kids are admiring. And when I digged a little deeper, they were talking about women, and they were basically talking about the flashy cars, the remarkably weird lifestyle that Andrew Tate has, and the kind of expectations he has from life, and he's kind of projecting them onto our kids. And then I talked to the teachers of the same school and asked them, do you know who Andrew Tate is? None raised their hands. So this is the problem, right?
Yes.
We are having these role models in our society that our kids are exposed to, and they're learning from them far more than they're learning from the teachers. And then we expect kids to listen to what the teachers are trying to say. And what are the teachers trying to say? That again is something very questionable.
But I think you say, okay, we have these role models in our society. They're not part of the society, but they're part of the global world.
True.
And today, I think it's really time, at least in Kashmir, to open our eyes and realize that we're part of the global world. And where do we stand?
So true.
When where are we? The world is a global village. So yes, of course, children are on social media today, and yes, there is a dual life, and I mean, even when you talk to a class 12 student, it happened to me recently. I was in a school, and we were discussing. I was like, yeah, I'm studying commerce, and I said, okay, and what are you learning from your teachers, and what course are you enjoying? And he said, none. And I was like, why? I said, what is it that you want to do? He said, I'm already doing. And I was like, yeah. And what do you do? He said, I'm in cryptocurrency.
Okay.
And I was like, you have this young 18-year-old boy from Kashmir into cryptocurrency, and his teacher is miles away from that. And he's like, I come here because my parents want me to get a degree, but otherwise I know it's of no use to me. And I think this gap needs to be bridged. And when you talk about Ken Robinson, what I understand from that is that we need to develop skills, because you need to prepare children for jobs that don't exist yet.
True.
So if you make them cram up information that is going to be obsolete maybe next year or the year after, because that's how fast it's moving today, then it's of no use. So this shift from memorizer to thinkers, people who can reflect, people who can innovate with the information that's given to them, that's what we need to look at. And our schools don't resemble that at all. Schools should be like experiential labs, actually.
That's beautiful.
Don't be scared of AI. Bring AI. Write an essay. Let ChatGPT write an essay. Now connect the essays.
This is actually a good idea.
Don't push back technology. Embrace it and see what you can do with it.
True.
Can you still compete with a machine?
Right.
Can you still be creative as ChatGPT? We're not having these conversations, and a lot of children now today feel the disconnect with the teachers, with the families, with the peers sometimes, and I think that's where mental health starts to get damaged. Okay,
True.
Who do I belong to? Where's my tribe? What's my identity? And I think we don't talk enough about these questions, and we definitely need to educate about mental health, but we definitely need mental health in education.
Exactly.
So that's where it's like morning assemblies or projects, or like, how do I recognize when I'm not well? How do I recognize when someone is not well? How do we lift up the stigma and we can talk about it? It's teachers who are scared to befriend their students because they're not going to respect me anymore.
That's a big one. And I think, for the college and university students, I often talk to them, and through my workshops and through my seminars, and also I go to these colleges and universities, and in India and in Kashmir particularly, I see there is a big gap. And a teacher never wants to come down to the level of a student and be more empathetic and see what their problems really are. And the student has this disconnect with the teacher always. And there is this facade of respect. What does respect really mean? I mean, when a teacher in Stanford University or Harvard and other places, and I have these friends there who talk about their relationship with the teachers. And I have grown up in a place, and I have studied in a place where my connect with my professor, with somebody who guided me in my MBSc thesis, was someone who would ask us to come over, and we would cook meals at his home, and then we all as lab mates would have it together. It built a very strong connect between the lab mates and the principal scientist who would guide us in the labs. But I don't see that happening here.
Everybody's scared of losing something. And when you think that you're on a pedestal, then you don't want to get down from there. Okay?
Wow.
But
and isn't that thing very ephemeral? Isn't that thing very superficial?
It is totally. You're just lying to yourself, basically. I am something, or I'm someone because I'm on that pedestal, because I did a research. If your research and your knowledge is not going to serve the next generation, then you failed. You failed.
Pretty much.
So if that was just to serve yourself or your ego or your title, you failed.
True. And I've seen it in this part of the world. People associate their identities with the titles that they possess. And it happens more often than not. We have these conversations with people who are maybe officers and maybe entrepreneurs or whatever they are, and they don't want to delve into the human aspect of their lives.
But see, you said it yourself. What they are, that's not what they are. That's what they do.
True.
Okay? So too often we define who we are based on what we do. Okay? So I am a doctor. No, that's your profession. You're bigger than your profession, right? That's
So
what
beautiful.
you do. Okay? And when someone can't define themselves anymore as who they are, they need all these superficial crutches to hold on. So it's like, okay, I'm the owner of a big house. I am the doctor. So if I take all this away from you, that means you're nothing anymore?
That's a really good question.
And I think it's a question we should all be asking ourselves frequently in life. Like, who am I, and what I want from life? What do I want to give to life and the people around? And I mean, positive psychology shows today that there are two ways of raising the bar of happiness. And what is it? Gratitude,
Yeah.
shukr,
Yeah.
and service to others.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Right? That
Yeah.
that keeps rising. And so it's not the title or the cars or the material that you're going to collect, but really what you're going to be thankful for and what you're going to do for others.
But then somehow people think that happiness is obtained from pleasure. And that's basically what the whole world is seeking, that dopamine hit time and again. And the social media, the drug problem that we have in Kashmir and elsewhere, it's actually, you know, chasing these very superficial things, these very superficial hits. And when in reality, I was reading this book by Arthur C. Brooks, and he has written this beautiful book with Oprah Winfrey, Build the Life You Want. And they talk about this idea of happiness and how pleasure, it's a beautiful idea. So pleasure is usually done alone. Pornography, so you don't, the people don't watch it in groups and all, so it's something that's very discreet, done in isolation. Social media, drugs, and all these different things. And happiness is actually pleasure plus memory, pleasure plus the experience that comes with it, and you can create a memory out of a pleasure. For example, maybe watching a movie with a spouse and then talking about it later is a far better idea. You remember it for a long period of time. At the same time, going out in a park, having a good time together is actually creating memories. And those memories help you become a lot happier in real sense.
Happiness is dangerous. I see it like
Okay.
that. Even in therapy, when I have couples coming to see me, or even I'm not happy. I said, okay, can we push the happiness aside, and can we look at being at peace rather than happiness? Okay, I'm at peace. I'm
Right.
content. And when we start to shift this cursor and we look at life from a peaceful lens, then there is a happening, and something starts to be seen differently and lived differently.
Right. This is something, this is probably the real definition of happiness of sorts. People are basically people who are sensible. They know, they understand, okay, we cannot be chasing a pleasure, because pleasures is something that leads us to the hedonic adaptation, and we end up seeking more and more and more, and the chase never ends. But what if people seek enjoyment and satisfaction and meaning together, and create a concoction out of it? And that's probably closer to being happier and more peaceful.
I think it's important for people first to define their goals in life. Okay. And mostly, even when I've done job interviews or whatsoever, and I ask a person, what do you see yourself in 5 years? I have no idea.
True.
No idea.
Yeah.
So first, defining a goal is extremely important. Where are you going? Okay, who I am and where am I going? And then once that is done, it's then training your brain and your behavior to reach that place.
Okay.
So, for instance, if I jump from pleasure to pleasure to pleasure to pleasure, I'm like a little monkey jumping from a branch to another, and I'm never going to reach my goal. But if I approach my goals with the essence of a saint, okay, then I'm there and I know why I'm there, and even if it's uncomfortable, it's okay, because I know where I'm going, okay. And to reach that, I have to go through uncomforts also.
Wow.
Okay, then there is no chasing pleasure and happiness all the time. It's just like, okay, I know where I'm going, and I know the path is going to be
Right.
difficult at times. That's okay. That's part of me reaching my goal.
And isn't it also about teaching this generation about, the delayed gratification that you're
Yes.
talking about? Teaching them that there is value in discipline, there is value in pain. If you're feeling some transient pain or stress, it might elevate you into a far better person in coming times. So I think this again is, I might be entering into a very controversial part here, but I think we have become very soft as people, and our generation talks about traumas, and they associate traumas with these very minute things. Do you see it as the downside of too much mental health being thrown around in pop culture?
There is obviously some of that. And then I think you need a professional to diagnose anything. And you're not your own professional. right?
Exactly.
So you don't go through listening to a video online and then say, yeah, oh, I'm also feeling this. Yes, I am traumatized, or this created a trauma, or I think we need to be extremely careful with the
And
way
we use these terms so loosely. I mean, we are using, we are self-diagnosing every other day. We see it on.
we're not only self-diagnosing, we are diagnosing others also, and I
yeah.
think that's even more dangerous. Like you take someone's power by diagnosing him when you're not even a professional. Like he's like this, she's like that, and labels, and then when you lock people in labels, you never give them a chance to change,
True.
and but yes, of course, if it's there, you're going to consume it. So again, if you want to take care of your mental health, be conscious of who you're listening to. I mean, I like very much Dr. Gabor Mate.
Okay.
I really, really like him as a professional. So if I listen to him, okay, on mental health or ADHD or whatsoever, it's very different than listening to an influencer who has no background in psychology and who is going to start saying, if you see these 3 symptoms, then you have, like, it's
It's a
more
lot more
complex than
nuanced.
that.
Yeah,
Yes,
it is.
Yes,
It
yes,
is.
yes. So, and then now everybody's traumatized. Everybody has ADHD. Everybody knows a narcissist.
So true.
And I'm like, how far social media can influence you, like, because every single day for an hour, 2, 3, it can be. I've been with students when I've asked them to check their phone, and you have this digital well-being setting where you can see how much time you've been on a phone. And I remember a student, I asked him, I said, could you check how much yesterday you've been on the phone? 12 hours.
What?
I said, have you met anybody? He's like, no.
Wow.
And I was like, you spent 12 hours on a device. But if you do that repeatedly, I mean,
it's going to be disastrous.
It's a disaster. And then what's there online is what's going to influence you.
And then the disaster is happening already. I mean, somehow our elders and we as, the elders in the society are oblivious to the fact that the disaster is happening. And we don't even want to see what our young generation is going through.
I think this is extremely important what you say. We don't want to see. We are really in denial because that's easier than facing, looking at the problem in the eyes and saying, like, okay, there's the problem and we need to do something about it. And when we go back to education, I think development skills are extremely important. Critical thinking skills. Is this content, again, developing me positively, worth my time? Is it bringing me closer to my goal? I think also what we need to do, and what we forget, It's building a value system. Families, schools, this is what they need to do, build a value system again. When a child tells you, why should I study? If I go on internet and do videos mocking people, I can make 10 times more money than a doctor. Okay, but a doctor's value system maybe is about saving lives.
Yeah.
And yours is just about making money at the cost of other people's mental health. So I think it's the value system that we really need to redefine. And everybody has to take their responsibility again.
At the same time, Yasmeen, there is this thing. We tend to follow the path of least resistance, when we are given a chance. And these social media apps have become so addictive. And, not everybody is conscious enough. And I think most of us are not conscious enough to know the impending problems of using, for example, social media, too much of it. And then we see the way these social media apps lure you in. It's remarkable. And the kind of, you understand it, the kind of research that goes into making them so attractive, making them so addictive that you don't get off social media. This is something where we probably need to help our kids understand it from the beginning. What are the ramifications going to be? And probably we don't even understand the ramifications as of now because they're not very visible.
Yes, I think we are navigating in waters that we don't really know. Okay, so we're trying to find solutions as we swimming in these waters. This Instagram and YouTube and Facebook boom is not that old. Okay, so I think what we need to be careful is, and we repeat it again and again and again, is how much do we give a screen to a child? How we are responsible for developing this habit in them also and making it a normalized thing. Like, okay, I think it's very important, yes, to be careful. But again, why the need of being on social media? There is a movement now in Europe where the youngsters are off it.
Okay.
They decide consciously not to be on it anymore. They decide consciously to meet again, to collaborate, to think together, and there's this immediacy is not there anymore. Like you can just think when you don't have your phone, like you just don't jump to Google and okay, let me Google it, or let me no, it's just like, oh, right, I never thought that in this way. And it's, the pace is slow, and you just reconnect to life and to the real world. So I think yes, maybe movements like that of experience life without your phone for a month.
This is part of that, first, we need to understand that boredom is an essential part of our lives.
Totally.
And we should give ourselves the freedom to be bored. And that, and because boredom, and help people understand that boredom is actually a good thing to have. It breeds creativity.
Exactly.
It helps you be more in tone with who you are. And then, the connection part that you touched. I was recently going through a study, and it talked about how alcohol generally is very, very bad and for health. And there is no study in the world that suggests it's good. But then there are certain cultures where having wine is associated with, longevity. And there was this discussion going on between Peter Attia and some other scientists, and they were discussing it. Why is it that wine, though again alcohol, why is it that this such a bad thing could be associated with longevity? And then an interesting insight came up, which was that it's not basically in those cultures where wine is, normal and all. In those cultures, it's not actually the wine, but the culture of being together,
socializing around that glass of wine.
So that is the real thing. That is what could elevate us to a really new level. And then there is this scientist who has worked, not a scientist, but there are a group of scientists who worked on the idea of the blue zones, including Dan Buettner.
Yes.
And Dan Buettner recently was suggesting research that suggested that if you have three meaningful connections in your life, just three, you have you're going to have a life expectancy of around 7 to 9 years more. Just having three meaningful connections is all you require to live 9 years longer. And this kind of is aligned with the grant study that suggested that people who have good relationships, they live longer and they live happier. And in fact, there is the director of grant, the current director of grant study. He ended up saying that, oh, it's actually after 50s, how much of a cholesterol is in your blood is less of an indicator of how long you're going to live than how good of a relationship you have with your spouse and others. So this kind of is remarkable, but we have to take it to people. We have to bring this awareness to
I
people.
was just gonna say that, and not the awareness. How do you create these meaningful connections in a place like Kashmir
Yeah.
that has a difficult past where people don't trust each other much? So the relationships are kind of superficial, and a lot of people have went through relationship traumas. So how do you bring and I think it's more complex that, like there are a lot of studies around the world that are saying fantastic things, but sometimes we need to relocalize and look at what are our ground problems here. And I think the more and more I'm in education, I think education is the key to educate differently, to equip children at a very young age. How we, for years, I don't know the way you were educated, but in the West, that's the way I was educated. Be kind to others, share, don't be mean, help, and collaborate, don't compete. And but I was never taught how to be with someone who bullies me, who's disrespectful to me, how to say no when I want to say no. I think the shame of putting boundaries was too big.
Right.
So at one point you actually end up being your own bully.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful idea, and I would love you to expand on that, because many a times our relationship with our own selves, had we been our own room partner, we wouldn't want to be here with ourselves. Because of the kind of conversations we keep having, because of the kind of disparaging we keep doing with our own selves, because we demean ourselves.
Yes.
Our conversations with ourselves are extremely toxic.
Yeah.
And how do we change that?
You have to change the narrative, and you have to be okay with trying, with failing, with experiencing, experimenting. It's okay. Again, it's a culture where mistake is not allowed. You're not allowed to fail. If you fail, you're a failure. No.
true.
It's you can't define yourself, and again, if you succeed once, that doesn't make you a champion also, right? So just embrace the experience and move on, and continue to move on. So I think if we bring it back to education, is if we equip children at a very young age to identify the wrong, to know what's right, to take the responsibility, accountability, then we're going to see a different generation. And we'll have to repair less damages.
Beautiful.
When you grow in the very wrong way, and then you reach me for therapy in your 30s or 40s, of course we can do the work, but it's going to be much harder than if it's done at a very young age.
So true. And then, Yasmeen, also this understanding of when we talk about mental health, usually, health as such, and the health sector, the medical sector, is seen from the perspective of the quick fix you get once you're injured. So it happens more often than not. That's how we are trained. That's how doctors are trained. I talk to a lot of doctors, and the way they are trained is not preventing the disease, but it's more like, once the disease is
Numbing it
there,
and
numbing it, and the medicines are for numbing and not going to the root causes and understanding the problem, or living a lifestyle where, we talk about mental health, we talk about how to, for example, manage your emotions well, which is not at all taught in our schools.
before managing them, recognizing
Recognizing
them,
them, exactly.
stop numbing
So
yourself to
true.
what you're feeling.
So
like
true.
then everything is, how do I hide my anger? How do I hide my sadness? I've heard people telling me I'm so weak. Why? Because I'm emotional. I'm like,
Oh,
emotions are powerful. That's not weakness.
Right.
Vulnerability is being powerful. I think that's where your power lies, actually. Like,
And then as a society, we have never been taught about living our lives to the fullest in terms of health, in terms of mental wellness, in terms of having a purpose and working on it, in terms of maybe mindfulness and stillness and calming your mind whenever you're in a stressful situation, in terms of connecting more with people. You must have seen it, and I want your perspective on this. You see, when I see a Westerner, generally it's not about extroversion, introversion, etc. I see them more welcoming. I see them trying to establish more connection, and here we are not taught to talk to a stranger. Have you recognized that
no,
as
I
well?
don't. I totally differ with you on this.
Okay.
So maybe because you've seen a Westerner in India.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe they travel in, maybe they want to connect to the culture that
Okay.
they visit in.
Uh-huh.
But if you walk in the streets in Europe, they're not going to naturally connect to you.
Okay.
Here they do.
Okay.
You board a bus, people that don't know each other talk to each other. Well, they board a sumo, they talk to each other.
Okay.
You go to the market and you buy in your fruits and vegetables, and people will end up talking to each other, and more often the elder generation.
Oh, yeah.
When I look at it, I see that the new generation is so much in a rush on the go, or on their phones while they're shopping at the same time, that they don't have the time to connect with with the vendor or with the people around. Like, but I think no, it's a society where people do still talk to each other.
So the bottom line is, we need to probably create a society, or sow seeds of a society where people normalize this value of living a holistic life.
Yes.
And they normalize being in control of their emotions and then expressing them well. At the same time, they normalize the fact that, okay, sometimes things can go haywire, and at those situations we should go to a specialist.
Yes.
But the problem here is, I was reading this National Mental Health Survey, and for every 1 lakh people in India, we have 0.75 psychiatrists. That's not even one for 1 lakh people. And then when you see in Kashmir, the problem is even worse. I was reading a research paper that suggests we hardly have 41 psychiatrists in the whole JNK.
Yeah, but I think that's where collaborations are extremely important. When in the mental health center where I was working with a psychiatrist, with a team of psychologists, with child psychologists, child psychiatrists, psychomotor therapists, occupational therapists. So as a team, not everybody needs to see a psychiatrist.
Yeah, obviously.
Not everybody needs a psychologist. Sometimes you need a social worker,
Right.
like, so if we had these multidisciplinary centers, and we'd work together, and we as professionals would refer, like, oh, I think you need medication, please go and see my colleague who's a psychiatrist. We'd do much better than what we are doing today. And what saddens me the most is that there is so much competition. In like, psychiatrists will compete with psychologists, and I don't even understand it, because their jobs are extremely different.
Yeah, they're different.
So I'm just like, can we rise above, sit all of us around a table,
Right.
and start pondering on what we can do to benefit the society. Because if we stay where we are, we're not going anywhere else than straight into the wall. So I really think that communication, collaboration, let's stop with these hierarchies where they don't exist actually. There's no place for those hierarchies there.
A couple of tangents on this question. One, thank you so much for pointing it out. And this is basically the structure of Telemanas also. So it is the initiative by Indian government, and it's working in Jammu and Kashmir as well. And I was reading recently they had around 4,000 calls in the first year of their, when they started. And this is this setup where they have psychologists and they have social workers, and then they refer cases to a psychiatrist in case of a need. But I also want to understand it. What happens when you're overloaded with patients? For example, you're a therapist, and I can imagine it must be quite grueling going through somebody's dark aspects. And then how do you rejuvenate yourself? Doesn't it lead to compassion fatigue? I'm sure you follow those European standards, and they have these they have a limit on the number of patients they can see every day. But I have seen here a private psychiatrist can even look at around 50 patients every day, and I can't even fathom 50 to 250.
But I think that's dangerous because at that point of time, you can't give to that patient what they're supposed to receive. So there is a kind of dehumanization, like, okay, what are your symptoms? Medicine, that's it, and bye. And these patients, there's nothing wrong in that, but they need more. So if there was a psychologist there by the side of them, or even a healer sometimes, I mean, you come from a culture that was extremely spiritual and rich, and having even healers in the same room as a psychiatrist could really make a difference.
It could empower the people.
Yes, and it would streamline what is happening in a very I think positive way. Otherwise, whenever everybody's working in isolation, a lot of dangerous things can happen also.
So true. So Yasmeen, what are some of the common problems that you have found mental health wise in Kashmir overall?
I think common problems that I see in the new generation and in the society, I see a lot of couple problems because there is really a shift that both need to do, and that's not happening. So the husband, I think, needs to shift from a place of just provider to partner.
Wow.
And the wife has already done the shift from housewife to maybe a working wife and is there half of a partner, but it's really, if it's happening, it has to happen hand in hand and not against each other. I think it's really, really important, but change is constant everywhere, and we're scared to embrace that change. And there also we want to keep with the traditions in place 50 years ago. And I don't say that they're wrong. I mean, absolutely not. But what I say is that today, different models can work for different people. And I think we have to approach life and marriage with an open mind, because the influences are global today.
True.
So if we are just like, if we stay in something extremely rigid, which is going to break rather than going with the flow and finding a new way of adapting. So that's one challenge I see in the society. Another challenge that I see is abuse. There's been a lot of, like, I think 70% of the people who come to see me have been sexually abused.
Oh my God.
Yes, and I don't think we talk enough about it. And most of the time I hear that, no, this doesn't happen in Kashmir. And I'm like, come on, we have to, again, being in this space of denial is unhealthy for everyone.
So true.
So I think making sexuality a taboo opens door to incest or to sexual abuse, because then even the victim is so scared to talk about it. But they're the victim.
Right.
And so by not being able to talk about it with a family member, then I think that is victimizing twice the person.
So true.
So that's something else that I feel that we need to. Of course, in some schools now they talk about good touch, bad touch, and don't approach a stranger. Understand that most of the time it's never done by a stranger.
It's never a stranger. Yeah, so true.
It's a family member or it's a family friend, or so it's very important that we open our eyes on that and we are extremely careful. Something else is mediocrity as a benchmark.
Oh, wow.
So if we keep mediocrity as a benchmark, the society will never rise. Okay, so when something is not done with excellence, we need to be able to call it out, and the person receiving it should not get all, like uneased but say, okay, yes, I didn't do my best, and I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna try my best. Can you help me do my best? So we start then shifting from a fixed mindset to a mindset of growth. Okay, so okay, this is a challenge. Okay, I need to rise my benchmark. So how do I do that? And that's how I'm gonna grow. That's how I'm gonna learn new techniques. That's how I'm gonna be able to do differently. So I think, again, yes, having the right mentors, maybe people where you can, refer to to better yourself. So these are challenges that
you encounter every day. I also want to understand, how would your ideal day for a person be? I mean, obviously, it depends upon a lot of factors, but then what are some of the common practices that we should make a part of our everyday life if we want to live a little more holistically and if we want to be a little more human? So,
well, if you want to live a little bit more holistically, you have to look at your life from a holistic point of view, and you have to remember that you're a mind, you're a heart, you're a body, and you're a soul.
Right.
And all of it needs nourishing.
True.
Okay, so if we start with your soul, maybe you need to start your day with meditation, prayers, connecting to nature. You need to feed your soul. For your body, what are you eating?
Right.
Okay. Do you have a diversified breakfast? Do you start your day like that? And are you moving? And movement is not always going to the gym. Movement can be, I mean, we have beautiful places in Kashmir. It can be walking around the lake. It can be, going anywhere in nature where you can just move. Your body can be in your own bedroom if you want. So then your heart, like your emotions, can you give yourself a pleasure a day, a small little one, and it can be giving a smile to someone and receiving it back. It can be eating an ice cream if that's what you feel. But just reconnecting to your emotions. When you're sad, can you just embrace your sadness and cry and say it's okay? So and then mind, it's like, what do I feed my mind with? Okay, do I read frequently? What thoughts are there in my mind, and I need to take care of and not believe your thoughts always. Thoughts are there. You don't have to believe them. Okay, you can just imagine that they're floating on a little shikara and they're floating away. You don't have to stay stuck to it and maximize the thought. So sometimes just changing the perception. Oh, well, interesting. I'm thinking this is not very pretty. Maybe I should let it go and see what's the next thought coming in. But we need more connection, Farhat. I think people need to reconnect more. People need to... sometimes I feel so sad when you see 5 youngsters together, all on their phones at the same time. And I just feel like...
And that's a common story. It happens in homes and it happens everywhere.
Yeah. And it's even sadder when you see in homes, you see the grandparents now on their smartphones. And you're just like, grandparents had so much to gift to the next generation or to the grandchildren, and they depriving them from these gifts.
Yasmeen, I would like to take a tangent here. When Okinawa, the Japanese this city which is kind of known for
Ikigai.
the ikigai concept, and it's known for the as a blue zone, and people live
Yes.
longer there. So one of the values that Dan Butner talks about in The People of Okinawa is that one of the common causes of conflict in Okinawa is actually who will the parents be with when they grow old. And there is this culture of having these community centers for old people, and they are celebrating old age.
Yes.
And they're connecting with each other. They have these common practices that they do with each other. I've often been wondering, where did our what do our old people do now, given the context we are living in 2023? So there are very limited things that we have for the old people. Let's not think of them from the perspective of them being wise and them having to disseminate the wisdom, but also them being human and them having this yearning to connect. And what we are seeing more often than not is that young kids do not want to live with their parents anymore in the context of Kashmir. And most often, what keeps happening is one of the biggest causes of conflict at homes happen to unfortunately become old people. So we need to probably rethink our values and help our old people be more, help build a system for them where they are more inclusive part of the groups. What do you
I
say
think you
about
need to
that?
rethink your values, but you need to rethink your system also. Again, forever people have been living with their parents, and we see today that that often causes more damage than anything else. So I come from an Arab background also,
Yeah.
and that was happening like that. But I've seen a lot of people living in the same house, but everybody had their own flats. So nobody was
Yeah.
alone, but nobody was on the top of each other also.
Okay.
So in this large family, they were still able to preserve their
have some privacy,
intimacy and
yeah.
privacy. Yes, so that was more like okay. And then children you'd see the cousins running up and down, and children would do the job basically.
Okay.
We're going to this one's today and tomorrow, and then they'd end up being with the grandparents. So close, but not on the top of each other.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to revisit your constructions differently, and then also just the way you have pickups for children,
right.
school buses coming.
Yeah.
You could have these organizations coming up with activities for older people, like clubs. Mostly men do that. Men still meet in masjids. Men still
Right.
maybe go for to clubs and all that. But women,
Right.
I think, are the ones who suffer the most by like sitting at home sometimes for hours and hours without seeing anybody. So if there was a system organized in that where they could meet and they could, just discuss and be themselves again.
Yasmin, this has been one of the most interesting conversations I've had on the podcast so far. So I think the time won't allow us to go further, and we will stop here with a small rapid fire if you're comfortable with it.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so you brace up for it. My first question is, you have to give a one-line answer, or you can add a few more lines if you want to. We have that liberty for you.
Okay.
So the first one, what led you to be a psychotherapist?
Oh, I think all psychologists, psychotherapists have had their own life traumas who made them more emotional, empathetic.
Okay.
And I think that's where I got my strength from. Using my life traumas to serve others.
This is beautiful. And what is your favorite therapeutic approach, if you want to kind of identify?
Holistic therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a quick answer. And is there any one book or resource that you would recommend people to go through?
I don't have a favorite book. I think, yeah, just like my identity is so complex and I come from so many different cultures, and
Yeah.
I think I like a lot of different authors also. And but as I said earlier on the show, Gabor Mate is really someone, like his last book, The Myth of Normal, or yeah, his previous book that talks about ADHD. I can't get the title right now. Yeah.
And what is your go-to strategy to overcome burnout? So, for example, you are.
For me,
Yeah.
I think having really an open conversation with God.
Wow.
I think, of course, I go and see my friends and I'll discuss, but I find solace in just sitting on my prayer mat and talking openly to Him. And there is nothing as therapeutical than that.
This is beautiful. And then one last question. What will be your one-line message for the youth of Kashmir or India?
Stop trying to be someone you are already.
Wow. Can you explain it a little? So, because I was expecting stop trying to be someone else. I mean, that's a cliche advice. You're telling stop trying to be someone you are already.
Stop trying to be someone. You are
Oh,
already
you are
someone.
already someone. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful advice.
So don't chase the ideal self. Just introspect, try to perfect every day. Like take it easy. Life is not a race. Life is not a chase.
Oh wow,
Life is, for me at least, an experience.
that's beautiful. We'll end it on this high. Thank you so much, Yasmeen, for being part of Valley of Wisdom.
My pleasure, and I'm really really happy that you've started this initiative to bring light back into the Kashmir space and the Indian space and the global space. So yes, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thanks for the kind words. Take care.